Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another knife review for you. Today, we have the brand new Cold Steel AD-15 Lite. Lite has in price more than Lite as in weight. The differences between this and the more expensive version is, first of all, it's $135.99 versus $234.99, so it is significantly less expensive, with a little caveat we'll get to in just a moment. But the differences are you have AUS 10A steel and Grivex handles, which are, it's Cold Steel's name for fancy plastic, but this is really fancy plastic, another thing we'll get to in just a moment. And other than that, pretty much the same. The more expensive versions, S35 VN and the Machine G10, where these are molded Grivex, so it does save a lot of money using the molds rather than the milling. That's probably more of the price difference than it is in the actual materials, but it does come out really well. And very excited about this because the AD-15 is a knife that I've had three of them. I've had an actual Demko. This is designed by Andrew Demko, and you could get the custom or semi-custom versions from his shop. I had one of those, and then I've had two of the production Cold Steel versions. I've had two of the G10 more expensive ones. I've had like the green and the kind of tan one. Then I had the black one that looks very similar to this. But I didn't wind up keeping any of those three around because they are kind of pricey. And it's an awesome knife, but I don't know. I just didn't want to keep them around for that price. Where this I might. And that's something that Cold Steel is doing a lot of. I really like how they're doing this. Again, they've been bought out by another company. I think this is still going to keep going, though. We will see. This is a new for 2021 model. Was probably still put in the pipeline under the previous regime, but still, but they did it with the 4MAX Scout, same thing. Like, I love the 4MAX, but it is kind of big and silly. I would not have kept the more expensive one. I didn't keep the more expensive one, but that one, this is $110 instead of $300 or $400. I'll keep that one. I think maybe that'll be the case with this one too. We will see, but I really like that they do this. Now, the caveat on the price, I did say that the more expensive version is currently $234.99. I want to get this out of the way so there's not a ton of comments about it down below. It's the only reason I'm bringing it up. Currently on Amazon, you can get them for like $120. That's not going to last forever. I know that I haven't got anything official from Cold Steel, but I know there are a lot of dealers really upset about it, and I don't think it's going to keep happening. I don't know who got those. I don't know how that's happening. But probably once those are gone, they are gone. So I'm mentioning it now because currently on I'm putting this up on May 1st of 2021. You can do that on Amazon, but videos live forever. That's not going to last forever. So what do I think of this knife? First impressions, having had the previous ones. I wish I would have kept one of them around to do a direct comparison, but alas, I did not. But the Grivex handles was the first thing I was wondering about. Are they going to be okay? Most of the Grivex stuff, like on the 4MAX Scout, is pretty nice. But this is way nicer. I don't know, I'm going to try to get as close as I can here. I mean, yeah, when you're this close, I guess you can tell that it's fancy plastic, but it's really, really, really well done. Really impressed with that. And honestly, I think just overall feel, I like the feel of it better than the Machine G10. The AD-15 has so many bumps and nooks and crannies. That Machine G10 always felt really rough. This isn't, a set of silk sheets by any stretch of the imagination, but it does feel a little bit more smoother and more comfortable than the G10. The AUS 10A steel, also no issues there. I've had it on the 4MAX Scout. I have it on the Lite. I use the 4MAX Scout for stupid stuff. I use the Lite for usual EDC stuff, and it holds up very well in both applications. It is not AUS 8. It is not even closely related, really, to AUS 8. It's a really good steel, and no issues there. And Cold Steel always does a great job on heat treat. Even their HCR13 MOV want steel is still, like, okay. So it's really good. It is super sharp out of the box. We'll get into more about that as we go on. But overall, it feels like every bit of $136. The Scorpion lock, a very unique lock from Andrew Demko, is unique and I assume not inexpensive to make. So we'll talk more about the lock when we get to deployment, but I have no issues with the price whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I'm ecstatic that it's going to be at this price for a long time. So let's do some specs and size comparisons before we go too much farther. It's a good sized knife. It's not as huge as everybody thinks it is, I think. It's a blade length of 3.5 inches, maybe just a hair over that. Overall length of 8.5 inches. Blade thickness of 0.15 inches. Handle thickness 0.51 inches. And a weight of 5.2 ounces. So, yeah, not super light. Like I said, the light, I think, refers more to the price than it does to anything else. We'll start out with a couple of the usuals. Now we're going to kind of veer off just a little bit. We have your Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Slide these down a little bit, I guess. So you can see it's a little bit bigger than a PM2. Obviously, a lot bigger than a Para 3. For the Benchmades, we're going to change things up just a little bit. I will bring out our usual 940. Because a lot of you guys have these. So you can see it pretty much does dwarf a 940. But I think a more appropriate comparison would be, this is the new full-size Adamas. And you can see it's just a hair smaller than the full-size Adamas. And the Adamas, whilst a large knife, the full-size anyway, they have a mini of this as well, it's not considered to be, oh my god, crazy huge. So you can see the AD-15 is not, oh my god, crazy huge. It's just a pretty good size. Now we'll bring out a couple of cold steels. First of all, the aforementioned Formax Scout. Obviously, the Formax Scout is significantly larger. It's a big old beast, but I love it for that. And the AD-10. Again, all Demko designs. It's going to be kind of a Demko heavy week. If you're watching this right now, you will see it'll be on. You can go back and look. We're going to have him on the live show on Sunday night talking about his new knife, and that will be separated out into another video you can watch later on. Blah, 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 blah. But yeah, Demko heavy weekend here on the first weekend of May of 2021. But yeah, just a little bit smaller than the AD-10, obviously dramatically smaller than the Scout. Now, I will say before anybody asks, I have heard no rumors of an AD-10 Lite. This is a slightly less expensive knife. This is $190. I think if they did a Lite of it, it would probably still be, 120-ish, because it's still a lot of steel and stuff in there. Maybe that's why they haven't done one yet. I'm not really sure. I don't think they could get as dramatic a price reduction. I might be wrong about that, but I would love to see, if they could do that for $90, but they already have a lot of knives that are like $90 that aren't nearly that size. So I don't really see it happening. But, all right, let's talk more about this knife. The blade, as I said, the AUS 10A steel I really like a lot. Never had a problem with it. Cold steels are almost always, of production knives, the sharpest thing out of the box. And even though this is a less expensive version of the other one, it's just as sharp as any of the other ones that I ever got. Sharp as hell out of the box. Very even grinds, no issues. And again, they do a great job with their heat treats. And this AUS 10A, just give it a chance, guys. It's a pretty good steel. Behind the edge, not super thin, 26 thousandths. So it's not a slicing machine, but I don't think anybody really buys this expecting it to be. It slices plenty well enough, but it's not a crazy slicing machine. And it has a crazy tip on it. Yeah. This is in the usual cold steel fashion of stab a car door tip on it, but don't do that. But you probably could, but don't do that. Don't do that unless somebody parks their Ford Escape and partially blocks your driveway for 4 days and 2 tickets before they finally move it. Then maybe, but not that that's something that just happened this weekend. But anyway, I'm sorry. I got off. It's been a rough day. They finally left though, so they saved themselves from having an AD-15 light hole in their car door. So next up, what do we want to talk about? Let's talk about the ergonomics. As I said, I think I do prefer the feel of this Grivex to the G10. The G10 on the regular AD-15, that's part of the reason why I didn't keep the 2 production ones. Now, my custom one had micarta scales that were wonderful. But the production, more expensive AD-15, the scales on are so rough. And that's why I didn't keep either of them. I think that was the main thing that made me not keep them. These are still pretty rough. And if I do decide to get rid of it, that will probably be the thing that makes me get rid of it. They're perfectly fine in the hand, but, moving your hands over it, they are still pretty rough. Jimping's pretty aggressive, but this kind of knife I'm not going to complain about that. So I would say ergos on this are not perfect, but I would say they're slightly better than the more expensive version, which was not expecting that. I kind of expected the fancy plastic to be sharper, but it is not. Let's go as far as the carry goes. Now, this is going to take a minute because I did make a slight change on this. With that these really rough textured scales, whether it's the G10 or the fancy plastic, you can see that the pocket clip lands right on that really rough stuff. So you can tell there, I did modify it slightly. I did bend the clip out just a little bit. Now, usually on my G10 ones, I took the clip off. Well, I taped off around the landing area, took the tape off, or took the clip off, and sanded down. You can see there's just two nubs you got to get. Knock those down, and it slides it out of the pocket a lot better. This one, I went the easier route and just kind of bent the clip out a little bit. If I do decide to keep this long term, I'll probably change that and do what I did before with the sanding. And sanding fancy plastic, not as bad for your lungs as sanding G10. So there's that. But with it bent out a little bit, it does slide out of the pocket pretty well. If you don't do that, it's a pocket destroyer. It's a pocket decimator. It is the Thanos of pocket destroyers. It's gonna destroy your pockets. Not a deep carry clip. Don't mind that a bit on a knife like this. It's fine. Deep carry clips have their place, and they have their place more often than they don't. But on this knife, they don't have their place on this knife. It's completely fine. But no flipper tab. Other than the weight, 5.2 ounces, which to me isn't too bad, but I know some people that might be beyond their limits. It's perfectly fine to carry. It just is going to ruin your pockets if you don't do something with that pocket clip. But other than that, it does carry pretty well. Deployment, the Scorpion lock is a lot of fun, and it's just super unique. You have this aluminum yoke here, which it is aluminum on this and on the more expensive version. And then to release it, how I do it anyway, thumb on this side, index finger on this side, pull it up, and then it just kind of drops down. It does flick out. It's a pretty fun fidgety lock. This one's fairly new. It's not completely broken in, but I will say that, of course, obviously, my custom one was a little smoother, but not hugely so. It did make a very satisfying ting, though, because I think this was titanium on my custom one, but it still makes a good noise. It's still a fun, fidgety, cool lock. It's unique, and it's a very, very sturdy lock for sure. When you're cutting on stuff, the pressure of your hand is holding it down. So that reinforces it even more. Even without that, it would still be a very tough lock, but it's just even that bit tougher because your hand is really holding that sucker down, which I think is pretty cool. So overall, yeah, I think for $136, this thing's a home run. It's always been a super cool knife. It does have an undeniable cool factor, and now it's at a reasonable price where it's not quite to the point of what I call F-it money, but it's close to it. And yeah, I never thought you'd see an AD-15 for this inexpensive, even given the steel choice and the what did I get on that blade? I've distracted myself. Even with the less expensive steel and the scale, still, like, I'm still surprised that maybe 150, 160. I wasn't expecting to be such a huge difference between the actual price of a production AD-15 and S35 Vienna and G10, not the crazy temporary Amazon price. The actual price and this, it's a huge difference. And always loved this design. I hope to see a lot more people carrying them and just try out that Scorpion lock. It's always kind of cool to have something with a little bit of a unique lock in the collection. And now this is a price that a lot of people can absorb a lot more easily. So hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've definitely been enjoying having this knife around. Have a good one.